5.3. Make sure you guys have read Topic 14, Lesson 1, Rise of the Aggressive Dictators. Right, you guys had a worksheet response to that too. 568 to 575. And then I'm going to assign for you guys. So we're going to do a 20-minute kind of lecture here, and then I'm going to assign for you guys to read. You guys might finish this during class today. So topic 14, lesson 7, pages 618 to 623. Make sure you guys have read all these pages for, I've already assigned these pages. So you've read all this for tomorrow. Logan, what do I reserve the right to do in class? Give you a surprise quiz. Give you a pop quiz. Yeah, so make sure, let that be a hint. Let that be a hint that you need to make sure you have read all those pages. And you did have some worksheets last week to complete in response to some of that reading. So make sure you guys have done all that. All right. Okay. So, all right. So what we're going to dig into tomorrow and Friday is looking at the Holocaust. So we're gonna look at some of the military events that lead up to World War II, things like the occupation of the Rhineland and the Anschluss and the Sudetenland crisis. All those things are on your study guide. So I'll spend, 15 minutes kind of talking about these things. And you guys are gonna fail. You have class. You guys are gonna spend like 20 minutes reading from the textbook. You guys are going to read about the Holocaust. One of the things that goes on leading up to the Holocaust is before there is any like outward physical violence towards the Jewish minority in Germany, the Nazi regime is going to spend years brainwashing people. The Nazi regime is going to spend years brainwashing the German population, right? And so what I'm going to emphasize the next couple of days is the historical chronology of the Holocaust. Kids are actually going to be reading stuff like this in children's books. This is what a greedy Jew looks like. Kids are going to be exposed to that, right? I can't fathom this. Owen, I can't imagine this, Andy. But like these kids, this is a photo of these kids being invited, being told to stand in the front of the class, and then the teacher writes this on the chalkboard. The Jew is our greatest enemy. Beware of the Jew. Okay. Wow. What do you guys notice the body language of these high school kids, maybe middle school kids? What do you notice the body language of these students? Yeah, listen. You would think that, right? For sure. They're like looking down, right? They feel. We're supposed to trust teachers, right? These are people that supposedly care about young people and want to see people do well and be successful. Every week it seems like I'm filling out letters of recommendation for kids to apply for colleges or scholarships. That's cool. I'm glad being part of that process of helping students realize their hopes and dreams and aspirations. So for a teacher to invite these students up in front of the classroom, who agrees with Alyssa? Those students probably felt shame. Raise your hands answering yes, those students probably felt shame. I can't imagine that is so disgusting. The Jew is our greatest enemy. Beware of the Jew. Wow. So we're gonna dig into the brainwashing that the Nazi regime is going to enact on the German society. Okay, and yeah, so we're gonna dig into the Holocaust. Great, you got your.
It almost doesn't change.
Well, it can be difficult to interpret photographs sometimes. and it can be difficult to interpret emotions, right? I don't know.
I
Jack, what do you think?
I've always thought that picture was of two Jewish kids getting close to the front of the class, not like Nazi. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're right, Jack. I think those are Jewish boys being called to the front and basically being called out. And I think they are holding their heads kind of in shame. Like if you know someone had done this to you know Mr. Herrick, right? Beware of the crazy history teacher, right? Beware of him, right? Maybe somebody would say something vile and disgusting on the chalkboard about me, right? I I might be shocked and probably ashamed, right? Um, yeah, I think there's some shit going on there. Anyhow, um, that's what we're gonna do the next couple of days. Digging into looking at Asia. This stuff is not on your study guide. You need to make sure you do have your study guides out because you go write down a couple of things here next 10 minutes or so. But first things first, I don't have anything on your study guide about Japanese invasion of China. Maybe I should change that because, you know, East Asia is going to be increasingly a really important part of our world. Maybe I should something like that on the study guide in the future. But basically, in the 1930s, Japan is having economic problems, and there are some in Japan that believe Japan should steal the economic resources of their neighbor. And so Japan is going to have two separate invasions into China, one in 1931 and one in 1937. In 1939, the unambiguous start of World War II, the date that everybody acknowledges as like the official declarations of war, is 1939 in Europe. But by 1931, or at least by 1937, World War II is already happening in Asia. So what's going on here is Japanese military leadership says we need to take natural resources from our neighbors. And so the Japanese prime minister tries to stop this, and then the Japanese military in 1931 is going to assassinate the prime minister. So throughout the 1930s, up until 1945, Japan is basically, in essence, going to be ruled by the military. Now, they still have the emperor, and the emperor was considered a godlike figure in Japanese society. The emperor still exists today in Japanese society, but he's seen as a figurehead. He's not seen as a godlike figure in Japanese culture and society. But they had the emperor during the 1930s and 40s, but he was kind of a Emperor Hirohito didn't really get involved in the day-to-day sort of functions of the Japanese sort of government. But by 1931, Japan was going to invade. Now, you should know that China has a long history of foreign occupation. You guys probably learned about this a little bit in world history, or you learned about it maybe in U.S. history too. Something called the open door policy, where the U.S. Secretary of State John Hay says to all the European powers, "Hey, let's divide up China. Let's not go to war over China. Let's divide it up and let's like take natural resources from China." Um, anyhow, the Boxer Rebellion is going to happen in 1899 to 1901. Basically, that's the Chinese native foreign population, some of them reacting violently against foreigners that are in China. Anyhow, jumping ahead to the 1930s, there's an event called the Mukden Incident. What's going to happen here is there's a railroad line that is built in northeastern China by the Japanese engineers called the South Manchurian Railway, and it's part of it's blown up. And so the Japanese military blames it on the Chinese. They say the Chinese did this. And so in 1931, they invade. The Japanese military uses this as a pretext, and the Japanese invasion of Manchuria is launched. And within 6 months, all of Manchuria is occupied by the end of 1931 into 1932. This region of China is turned into a separate country called Manchukuo. Manchukuo is in essence ruled by the Japanese military. They're just extracting natural resources. Even today, Japan has to import like oil and natural gas. They don't have any like domestic energy. Even China has to import oil and natural gas. But they're going to take other resources like ore, like rocks and minerals in the ground and turn it into steel and other stuff. So they're going to start taking resources from China. By 1937, who's played that cool game called Marco Polo? Is that fun? It's amazing. He was also a historical figure. So there's a bridge in China called the Marco Polo Bridge. Anyhow, what's going to happen is this bridge is blown up. The same story. The Japanese military blames this on the Chinese military, and they use this as a pretext to invade farther south near Beijing. Just south of Beijing is a region called Nanking. And the Nanking government says they are going to resist the Japanese invasion. And so the Japanese military, like in 1937, brutally, like they defeat Chinese military there, and then they brutally like murder men, women, and children, like raping women, beheading men, like stabbing to death babies with their bayonets. It's called the Rape of Nanking. Horrible, vicious event. And so by 1937, there's lots of violence and bloodshed happening in Asia. And throughout 1937, the estimate is 300,000 Chinese are killed by the Japanese military. Vicious, pretty horrible. So by 1937, unambiguously, the World War has begun in Asia. And by 1942, Japan is going to take all of this land. Now we're going to get back to Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. Japan is also going to conquer the Philippines, which was U.S. territory. So we took the Philippines in a war with Spain in 1898. And then after World War II, we will give the Philippines their independence. But this is U.S. territory. So by 1942, Japan has taken all of this land. By 1941, we're going to start giving weapons to the Vietnamese, to China, to help fight against the Japanese military. That is something called Lend-Lease. We're going to start giving weapons and military aid to the Chinese, the Vietnamese, to fight the Japanese. All right. Now, I got to take attendance here. Who likes Dr. Seuss? This is a Dr. Seuss cartoon here. I'm going to have you guys take a minute, kind of look at this. What's going on in this Dr. Seuss cartoon? I'm going to have you guys then turn and talk to each other. What's going on here? Who likes Dr. Seuss? I don't think I want to know you. Anyhow, Dr. Seuss did a lot of World War II like propaganda cartoons. Anyhow, what's going on here? I'm gonna take attendance. You guys are gonna figure out what's going on here.
I think I think it's when Hitler was taking up all the countries, and then they were like letting him do it until it was like too much.
You think?
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm gonna go with Jag. I feel like that's right.
Oh yeah, the swastikas. I didn't even see that.
Hey, I couldn't see that. I don't see that assignment in the basket or in my file.
Maybe I was
Just
wrong. I'll double check.
Yeah, just check to make sure that you checked it. All right, what's I heard Will, I heard you say I agree with Jack. What Jack, what did you say?
Said it's like when Hitler was taking up like Austria and those countries, and then eventually when he invaded Poland, I think they were like, that's too much. I don't know.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
That's a perfect summary. So there are a couple of stages here where the European powers give in to him. They give in to his demands. Okay. So can anybody tell what his T-shirt says? It's kind of small. It says the appeaser. What does it mean to appease?
It's pretty plain.
That's pretty good. Yeah, appeasing basically means giving in to somebody else's demands. So to use the analogy of a marriage, I know marriages could be sensitive topics, but to use the analogy of a marriage, right? If you've got a relationship that should be kind of equal, right? And one side is really kind of domineering, right? The other person to avoid conflict is like, I'm gonna give in to your demands, right? I'm gonna appease you, right? I'm gonna, okay, whatever you want to do, maybe to, maintain peace with the family, maintain peace with the marriage, with kids, right? Yeah, so you're gonna see that with Hitler violating the Treaty of Versailles, occupying the Rhineland, Sudetenland crisis. You're going to see Hitler keep taking one more thing. That's why the cartoon says, one more lollipop and then you all go home, right? Hitler's going to keep wanting one more lollipop. He says, this is the last thing. This is all I want. This is the last thing, right? But then he takes one more thing, right? Yeah, and I heard Jack say swastikas, and these look like menacing sea monsters, right? Kind of these Dr. Seuss kind of cartoons. All right, in 1933, Germany is going to no longer continue repaying the World War I debt with the Treaty of Versailles. It's going to say, no, we're going to stop paying back that war debt. And then in 1934, Hitler starts building up the military. He announces to the world, oh yeah, in 1935, he announces to the world, oh yeah, I'm building up the military now. By 1935, he's got a couple of people like in the military, which was a violation of the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler was one of these, World War I vets that, according to the Treaty of Versailles, Germany had to fire most of their military. So now they're building up their military. They're violating the Treaty of Versailles. And now we get the Rhineland crisis. So in Rhineland, the Rhine River flows through the Rhineland. So right here on your study guide, just on the map right here, the Rhineland this is a region of Germany. So this like yellow region right here, this is a part of Germany, okay, and it borders Belgium and France. Germany was not allowed to put soldiers in the Rhineland, okay, according to the Treaty of Versailles. You cannot put soldiers in the Rhineland, even though it is part of Germany. They couldn't put soldiers there. Why do you suppose that provision was put in place? The Treaty of Versailles. Yeah, kind of.
Germany invaded France through them. So they were
Yep, it's called the Schlieffen Plan. Yeah, they invaded through Belgium into France. Yeah, and so Germany is not allowed to put soldiers in there. So Hitler in March of 1936, he orders 32,000 policemen and soldiers into the Rhineland. Okay, so right here on your study guide, it talks about right there what was Hitler's purpose in occupying the Rhineland. He puts these troops and police into the Rhineland, but he tells his general, okay, he tells his general in charge. So make sure you write this down, and then I want you to understand the why. What's the why going on here? So he tells his general, I want you to retreat if the French military shows the slightest hint taking a military stand against him. Okay? Okay, what's the purpose here? What's the why? What's the why? That would kind of make sense with the patterns of what Japan is doing in China. That would kind of make sense with the pattern there, right? Stage some sort of event. Use that as justification for larger. Okay, I think you're on the right track there. What else? What else, Brady?
One of the prime reasons why they treat just
that comes much later, but yeah, that comes much later. Yeah, that comes in the spring of 1940. So that we are still 4 years away from that. But yes, the Dunkirk event is going to happen. That the encircling of the French, Belgium, and British forces is going to happen May of 19. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. So the why here is just what are they going to do, right? What are they going to do? He's testing them, right? What is France going to do? It is like a poking the bear thing, so make sure you write down. He's just trying to test. He's just trying to test France. What is France going to do? What is Great Britain going to do? And France does nothing. France doesn't do anything. France lets him do it. They don't do anything. Now, why are the European countries appeasing Hitler? So these are the first couple of examples. He violates the Treaty of Versailles and builds up the military. He sends soldiers into the Rhineland when he knows he's not supposed to do it. Why do you suppose the European powers appease him, Jack?
Guess they just got out of World War One not too long ago, and they're not trying to go right back to war unless they have to. You know?
Yeah, they're a couple of decades removed from World War One. World War One ends in 1918, and they all want to avoid another major conflict. Okay, they want to avoid another major conflict. Another reason why they're accusing him is because some of the European leaders thought that Hitler's demands were reasonable. Right? Some of the European leaders said, well, there's a depression going on. Let's let Germany sort of push the pause button on those cash payments, repaying the debt. That sounds reasonable during a depression. Let's allow Hitler for now to stop repaying the World War One debt. That sounds reasonable. And the Rhineland, it's 2 decades later. Maybe because this is part of Germany, maybe we should let Hitler put soldiers into the Rhineland. After all, it is 2 decades later. Jack, you're absolutely right. They want to avoid another major conflict. But here's what we also need to understand. The major European powers, they're more afraid of communism. They're more afraid of the Soviet Union than they are Germany. They are more terrified of the Soviet Union and communism than they are of Nazi Germany. And so that's why they appease. They definitely, the biggest reason is they want to avoid. So, Austria, the Anschluss. So, the Anschluss is on your study guide. And what Hitler announces in 1937, he announces this to his generals in secret. He announces, I need to take the land of my neighbors. So in 1938, he proposes, I want to unify with Austria. Now, Austria was German speaking. Austria was an ally during World War I. Some Austrians looked to the north of their stronger German neighbor and actually supported this. Some Austrians supported unification with Germany. So on your study guide, the Anschluss, what is the Anschluss? It's the German-Austrian unification. Now, the leader, Kurt Schleswig, his last name is kind of hard to pronounce, it's got too many consonants. The leader of Austria says, wait a second, we will, and politically, there were a lot of Austrians that supported unification. So he says, wait, if you want my country, let's first have a nationwide vote. If the majority of people vote to unify with Germany, then we'll let you unify. Well, before that national vote can happen, Hitler invades Austria. It happens without a shot being fired. The German army just moves in, and they take Austria. Okay? And then raise your hands if you think that this is probably a lie. Hitler announces to the world, oh, took Austria, but they had their referendum. 99% of the people of Austria voted for us taking their country. Who says that's probably a lie? Who thinks this is not a coincidence? Raise your hand. The leader of Austria that I just mentioned, he is found dead. Probably not a coincidence. Yeah, probably not a coincidence. So, anyhow, Germany has taken Austria. So that's the Anschluss. Germany has taken Austria. Now, next, there's the Sudetenland crisis. The Sudetenland, on the map here, it's sort of conveyed in like tan and brown right here. This is the border between Germany and Czechoslovakia. Hitler says the German population is being mistreated by the Czechs, by the Czech population. Germans are being mistreated by the Czechs, and I need to, as a defensive action, I have to take this border region that borders Germany, okay? Because Germans are being mistreated there in the Sudetenland. And so, also you should know it's a mountainous region. It's a mountainous region, not what mountains mean, right, on a battlefield. But it's a mountainous region, and there's 3 million Germans living there. So Hitler says, I need to take this region. This is the last thing I want. I need the Sudetenland. And so, as an effort to avoid war, okay, this is 20 years after the end of World War I. On your study guide, there's something called the Munich Agreement. There's a conference that is going to happen in Germany called the Munich Agreement. All the major leaders of Europe go to Munich. There's Benito Mussolini, the dictator of Italy. There's Hitler, the dictator of Germany. There's the French president. There's Neville Chamberlain, the British prime minister. And so they all meet in Munich, and they agree to allow Hitler peacefully to take the Sudetenland. Okay? And then Hitler says, this is all I want. Last thing I want is the Sudetenland. And so they hand over the Sudetenland, which is part of Czechoslovakia, to Germany. Okay? Now, I'll say one more thing about this, Noel, is the leader, the government leaders of Czechoslovakia were not invited. Andy, that would be like if the Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, was like, hey, there are Canadians living in Maine, and the Americans are abusing the Canadians living in Maine. I need to take Maine to protect, right, those Canadians living there. We're going to have a conference in Toronto, and all the European powers turn over Maine to Canada, and no Americans are invited. Thinks we as Americans would be upset about that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Maine produces. Fish, syrup. I don't know.
Lobster.
Lobster. Oh, give it up for the lobster. Give it up for the lobster. Yeah, they produce that lobster. Overrated, I think. Anyhow, we would not want them to take Maine, right? So the European countries have handed over part of a sovereign country to Germany, and fortunately, Hitler is a man of his word, and fortunately, Hitler, all he takes is the Sudetenland, and World War II never happens, and our unit is done. Is that what happens? No. Okay. Now I said mountainous region. What do we know about mountains? They're tall, Ryan. What'd you say? They're bigger. They're tall. Is it? Why would mountains be considered key terrain on the battlefield? What do mountains give you as an advantage? Listen. The high ground. Yeah, you can more easily shoot at the enemy from the high ground and from the low ground shooting up, right? Mountains tend to have like trees in them, so you can get cover and concealment, so the enemy is having a harder time shooting at you. It's always easier to attack from the high ground than it is from the low. So what's Hitler going to do to come? What's he going to do? What's he going to do? He's going to take the rest of Czechoslovakia. Yeah. 6 months later, he violates the Munich Agreement, and he takes, Ryan, the rest of Czechoslovakia. So, yeah, Hitler is not a man of his word. So, what you need to know here is the Rhineland. What happens there? What's the Sudetenland? Why is that a crisis? What's the Munich Agreement? And you should kind of understand this pattern of Hitler is saying, all I want is one more thing, and then he invades and takes over, right? That's the pattern, okay? All right. Okay, once you guys have this down here, you guys can turn to topic 14, lesson 7. That's pages 618 to 623. And you guys can start reading about the Holocaust. All right. So for tomorrow, I do assign you guys to read these pages. You don't have to answer these questions on a piece of notebook paper or anything, that's fine. Just read these pages for tomorrow. Did you want this page? Done? All right. Okay. All right. Yeah. Go ahead. Take the last 20 minutes here and read this for class. Oh. Well, that's a tough question there to answer. I mean, so in, I would say that I don't know if specific anti-Semitism is what happened about years. I think the Old Testament scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, definitely Israel is come in the 6th century BC. They're conquered a couple of times, had a lot of versions. There, there's the diaspora exile, but in those are just empires sort of doing what in sort of the baptism chart one. Although that's what they say that God is punishing Israel for their unthinkings, right? But thousands of years of anti-Semitism. I mean, sure. I mean, if you want to interpret slavery, yeah, thousands and thousands. You could have an interpretation of, but I think this is something all of us definitely throughout the last few years there were pogroms, right? Different times in different regions. So they would say, well, so there would be like acts of violence or shooting. I mean, I don't think there's anything terrible this going on to Jewish people. I think the anti-Semitism, Hitler and the Nazi regime, it has to do a bit with eugenics, like that historical movement. Like there was this rise in sort of scientific sort of thinking, and not Darwin himself, but Darwinianism, which is like we can sort of classify and identify characteristics in the process of like if natural selection goes on and evolution goes on, we then can help that process by identifying the best characteristics, best desirable that Darwin said nothing about will do that. Take that idea and call it survival of the fittest. So I think there's something about that historical moment and find problems all across Europe, especially in Germany. Yeah, I don't know about but yeah, and even white is a but you know, yeah, good. Yeah, that is a provocative question. Where does all this nature come from? So that's a really interesting question. Yeah, super interesting. Jeff, do you want to say?
Yeah. Watched a video on it, and it's just like they've always been used as scapegoats, and that like builds up over time. Will like go back way far back, and they've been used to like blame just every problem on them, and Hitler like blamed every single problem ever on them instead of just one thing.
Yeah.
My girlfriend asked her grandpa why people always hated Jews, and he started saying a bunch of, never mind.
Okay. All right. Well, I bet, yeah, but those are interesting conversations. And in the book right here, it says Jewish people are blamed for World War One. They're blamed for inflation. They're blamed for abstract painting. And so everything Hitler doesn't like, he's just going to throw it. Jewish people. Well, hungry.
Right, how
Well, I'm living the dream. Checked one more time. See this
Okay.
in the basket. So
Maybe I put it. Maybe I didn't turn it in. I'm just imagining that. But I'll double check my bag. It's kind of a mess, so I'll do that in a bit.
and I'll give you a second, please, just in case.
Okay.
But I'm sure you started. But
Okay.
yeah, please look for it. And let's turn it to Will, don't have this from you. This worksheet here. So this one is at my house. I did last night. Okay, my desk. I can get it too. I'm sure you will. Promise. but just temperature at once. Okay. Oh, did I? Maybe I just. Yeah, I. Same. Yeah, Jack did. Ian did just produce his and had a grade on it, and I just had neglected to enter it at the grade. So that could be the case with you as well.
Okay.
But just see if you could find.
Okay, I will try. Okay.
Well, you see it. Actively go out. Oh, yeah. Can I feel? Yeah. Can you see it? See it? Yeah. Okay. All right. Victor, so I hope you find it. Yeah. Actually, I feel. Found Victor? No. I got something. Well, suppose. Okay, let's discuss this. Class, we'll spend more time the next couple of days discussing this topic. But right now, turn and talk to each other. What are some of the, what did you read? What did you read in response to some of these questions here on the PowerPoint slide? Go ahead and turn and talk to each other.
Looking down,
Flower.
I was so the first part, white tile.
Yeah, so basically, these points, like, Got it. There you go. All that. Oh yeah. I did like just stuff. Okay, let's discuss this. Let's discuss this. Henry, any of these questions here, Henry? What did you discuss with Alyssa, Owen, Ryan, people around you? Actually, it's not just blonde hair, but yeah, Lacey, you want to answer that? Yeah, I think the blonde hair, blue eyed was an ideal, but not every Germanic, Nordic, Anglo-Saxon person with blonde hair, blue eyes. Some people have dark hair, dark brown hair, brown eyes, like Hitler himself. So we hear this oversimplification of well, the Nazis just value blonde hair, blue eyes, but in actuality, they did have a lot of ideas about race, but they identified Anglo-Saxon, Germanic, Nordic as a separate race. This idea of culture. What did he blame the Jews for? Yeah, right. Yeah, just we'll throw abstract art in there. Blame them for everything. Yeah, pretty crazy. All right, we'll stop right there. But class, I wish you guys a good rest of your day. Zach, have a good rest of your day.